that I taught what I was supposed to teach, and that was English language and literature. Didn't bring politics into the classroom. My politics was on my own time, outside school hours. However, I came over the years to the attention of certain groups who don't believe in freedom of speech, and I know early on they made representations to the Board of Education, and it didn't go very far. So what they then did was because I think all bureaucracies tend to circle the wagons initially. The easiest way to deal with a complaint is to give them some fluff story and tell them to buzz off. So that helped me initially. Well, then they engineered a couple of public incidents. And one of the public incidents was it was actually a nothing incident. The local anti-racist group, the Toronto Mayor's Committee on Community and Race Relations, had been instrumental in trying to shut down a meeting hall. You know, there's a government-funded body trying to lobby an independent hall to shut down a meeting because the people meeting at that place were supposedly racist. So I went to the meeting of the Toronto Mayor's Committee on Community and Race Relations. The longer the name, the shorter the commitment to freedom. And I thought, well, I'll just rise as a delegation and say my 2 cents worth on behalf of the Canadian Association for Free Expression. Well, I found out you had to register weeks in advance to be on the agenda, so I thought, well, I'll sit there and see what happens. And the first speaker was a native Indian. And he was a big noise in those days. He had government money to run a clan watch. Well, there was no clan, but it's a good way to collect some money. So he'd been a big noise in anti-racism. So he was outlining all the measures he thought ought to be taken. I won't bore you with all of them, but after 3 or 4 proposals, including a city ordinance banning racists and fascists from meeting in public halls, and other measures. So I thought, well, there's a good old British technique called a heckle. So I thought, I have a great thing to say. So the Indian has said, and other measures. I said, scalp them. I thought it was funny too. I did. Whoa! I was immediately expelled. I was formally ordered out. In fact, they even called the commissionaire. So these are old gentlemen in uniforms puffing up the stairs to escort this dangerous thought criminal off the premises of the Toronto City Hall. So that's fine. I thought, well, okay, got to get home early tonight. I didn't realize that one of the censorship groups who had a lot of influence with the media got onto the media that night saying, in fact, their leader said, now we finally got him. We got him on camera saying, still. So the next day, it became a big cause célèbre, and various multicultural groups were all calling the Board of Education to get me fired because I was a racist. Still, the bureaucratic mentality protected me from the first assault. And so what the Board of Education said, I guess they were right, the Director of Education said I was an exemplary teacher. I guess that's true. And I was a good guy, but anyway, the pressure continued, and then they began to weaken. And so I got called in and reprimanded and was told what I did was wrong. But I couldn't see it. I did it on my own time. And it was a joke. It was a heckle. Meaning, in case anybody didn't get it, how far would you go? He said other measures. Well, how far? Scouting? Well, I thought it was funny. Anyway, they didn't. That's another characteristic of the politically correct. They have no sense of humor. I won't bore you with the rest of the story, but there were a couple more media engineered incidents. Each time I was disciplined more severely and finally given an order. Any further repetition of these offenses, and you could be fired. Now, they wouldn't tell my lawyer what a further repetition would be. In other words, they wouldn't tell me what exactly I could say or do and what I could not do. The clear message was, we don't want to hear from you. You shut up. Well, finally, 6 years later, they decided to fire me, and I hired Doug Christie, Canada's leading free speech lawyer, and he came out to fight with the Board of Education for me. And he did a masterful job. He failed, but he did do a masterful job. And my union leader, who was also on side, I was always a good union man. I know that will make me most unpopular here, but he said to me, you know, your lawyers doing a great job, great inspiring speeches on freedom of speech, but he said, you're going to lose. I said, why? You're supposed to be my lawyer. Like, oh, yeah, we're backing you. But he said, because you're going to lose because the day they fire you, the phone calls will stop. And if you look at the union literature, that's absolutely correct. And the battle did go on in courts and various other things for a number more years, but in the end I lost. But I found that comment very, very significant and very, very cynical but very accurate. He said, when the day they fire you, the telephone calls will stop. In other words, the morality that governs most people in the business establishment is, please don't bother me. There is no principle, I believe, the Iranian gentleman is an exception, a belief in freedom of speech. Or just a cussed independence. Nobody's going to tell him how to run this hotel. But I think that is a factor we have to recognize. How do we defend against it? I'm not quite sure. But most people, even people who may vaguely mean us well, will hold out maybe for the first round. But if the pressure continues, all they ask for is, please don't worry me about this. Just please leave me alone. What's the price for the phone calls to Scott? Fire Fromm? Okay. Cancel Jared Taylor and American Renaissance? Okay. Then the phone calls will stop and my life will be good again. So please don't ask me to idealize the business establishment. I don't. But I think that it's a factor we have to take into account in our calculations, in how are we going to proceed from here. I really do think that's a lesson that we can take up from both sides of the board. And you see the pattern, distressingly, is the same on both sides. So it's a constant battle about holding meetings, keeping them secret enough that we don't have these problems, or when they are publicized somewhat, and we do have problems, how do we deal with this? And often it is involved having a backup poll and so on. So the battle to promote our ideas is a battle primarily, often, just to have the right to speak, let alone to have an audience. Then there are the legal ways of attacking free speech in Canada. One is through customs censorship. The customs have the right to keep out any book in the judgment of a grade 12 dropout might expose privileged groups to hatred or contempt. It's all very, very complicated. I mean, actually, the protections of the hate law, for instance, truth and so on, actually apply. But the decision will be made at a very low level, as I said, a grade 12 dropout. Now, you have a bureaucratic appeal. You can write an appeal and explain why you think the book isn't hate, and it will be decided at a bureaucratic level. And it's usually a Canadian trade-off. There are 10 different titles and 10 are seized, and you appeal, you might get 6 back or 5 back. But it still keeps flying. Okay, at that point, what can one do? Well, the only thing you can do is go to court. Oh, that sounds like a good idea. Yes, for a $40 book. And we were thinking of taking one of Roger Pearson's books. Both of these, incidentally, are banned in Canada. Race, Intelligence, and Bias in Academia, Roger Pearson, editor. It's about scholars who've been attacked for their views. Introduction by Hannes Eisner. Banned in Canada as hate. Shockley on eugenics and race. Banned in Canada. I wanted to take Shockley on eugenics and race to court, and my lawyer said, well, yeah, $40,000. No. Because she said, it might be up to a 2-week trial. We'd have to bring in experts. We'd probably have to pay the experts. Then, if we lost, not only